Unit 2. This week is a really fun week where we're going to continue exploring apples and the letter A. The supplies that we're going to need for this week are some sticker dots, construction paper, plain white paper, toothpicks or golf tees, some sort of measuring tape or ruler, something you can make some small ramps out of, such as a piece of wood or books for rolling apples down, some masking tape, a large kitchen spoon, flipper, and tongs. The books that we're going to use this week are the same books that we used last week. We couldn't find the books that were in this specific program, but the books that we used were How Apples Grow by Jill McDonald, which I found on Amazon, the Kindle edition, not the actual physical book itself. We also found 10 Apples Up on Top by Dr. Seuss on YouTube, and I also got Cayuco's Apple Picking that I borrowed online from our local library. Let's get going. Our first activity for the day was sorting apples. Again, I had our placemat and our apples set up in place, and the placemat this time, instead of having 5 squares, just had 2 different squares so we can sort the apples by different attributes. This is a math-based activity that will help your child build the foundation for mathematics. So we started out sorting the apples by size, first the big ones in one square and the smaller ones in another square, and then we went on to sort them by color and some of the same activities that we did last week with our sorting by sticker and no sticker and stem and no stem. After that, we watched again the 10 Apples on Top video of the Dr. Seuss book on YouTube because I couldn't find the actual book at our local library. She really quite enjoys watching these videos online, as it's something that is rather new to us in our routine. Once that video was done, I caught her a few times while she was sitting at her table, counting the apples on top of the heads for the activity that we did last week, where we drew little pictures of ourselves and then used our fingertip to dab apples up on top of our heads on our drawing. And I have hung that picture right next to her table where she sits a lot in our dining room with some of our other apple activities that we have done last week. So I caught her a few times throughout the day counting the apples on top of everybody's head. Our easy activity for the day was an apple transfer. So this is where you take the apples from one container, bowl, or dish and transfer them to another container, bowl, or dish using various items that you'd find likely in your kitchen. For this activity, I picked a flat spatula and a slotted spoon and a pair of tongs to give her a little bit of variety. To introduce this activity, I didn't sit her down and say, now let's do this. While she was sitting at the table playing with some of her other toys, I just set this activity up and I sat next to her and I started doing it myself, which naturally piqued her interest. And then of course she wanted to try herself. So we sat there for quite a bit trying the different means of transporting these apples and which ones she liked to use better, which ones are harder, which ones were easier, and it was a really fun activity. She even came up with a rather interesting way of grabbing a smaller set of tongs and picking the apples up by their stems and transferring them to another bowl, which was one of the hardest ways for her to transfer them, but she seemed to enjoy that way the most, I think because she thought of it all on her own, which is always the best. All in all, on Monday, the activities were quite simple and easy. She found interest in them all. We did sing our poem and song a few times throughout the day, though she wasn't really interested in singing those anymore. And as far as the book for the day, I let her pick which one she wanted to read, whether she wanted to read How Apples Grow or 10 Apples Up on Top, and she picked 10 Apples Up on Top. I think she likes it that it is read to her online, and it's not just her sitting in my lap and me reading it myself. Tuesday, we're going to talk more today about the letter A and the numbers 1 and 2. Nola is already familiar with the letter A and with the numbers 1 and 2, but this is a great way to revisit those things in a different way. So I had set up the printout that came with this program of the letter A on the table in the morning with the bowl of apples and her poem and song, and this one caught her attention. On Monday, the bowl of apples on the table didn't really catch her attention too much because it had been there all last week, even though I had removed it on the weekend and placed it back there on Monday. She saw it, but didn't seem too interested in it on Monday morning. However, on Tuesday, with the A there, it grabbed her attention right away. She said, hey, it's the letter A. So right away, we started talking about the letter A and the sound that it makes, and words that we know that start with the letter A. And right off the top, she picked the word apple. Today I found another book online that was available through our local library, and it was just simply a Caillou Goes Apple Picking. There's not too much information about how apples grow or the particular parts of it, but it was another book that I could throw into the mix here that involved apple picking, and that was age appropriate for her and kept her attention. A little later on in the day today, when we flipped our calendar over to December, she was very interested to look at all the pictures in the calendar and started to talk about the months. She knows her days of the week. We have a little song that we sing, and every morning she asks me what day of the week it is, and I sing the song up until the day that it is, and I let her fill in the blank. We don't really have a calendar routine in the morning. I'm still looking for a calendar that I think is suitable for her, where she can help me pick the numbers and say the days and stuff like that. I just haven't quite found it yet. So for now we just do it verbally without a physical calendar, but having this calendar, one of our tasks for the day was to look for the letter A throughout the books. She doesn't seem to be too interested in finding the letter A within the books, but when we came to this calendar and we were talking about the names of the months, she started noticing the letter A. So as we went through, she was looking at each name of the month to find the letter A, which was a great way for this activity to naturally come about. A little bit later in the day, she brought to my attention that she was collecting circle food. Now, this was an activity that we did last week, and initially she wasn't really too interested in it. I had to prompt her a few times to have a look around for stuff, and she quickly found a couple of little things, and then she was done with it rather quickly as well. But this just proves that that activity last week, though it didn't seem to be too effective the first time that we did it, it stuck with her, because today, of her own accord, she decided to start collecting foods that were circle foods and that, looked like apples. So I thought that was great that that activity stuck with her. Another activity that we had to do today was to look at the number 1 and look at the number 2 and ask your child to bring you one toy and then ask them to bring you 2 toys. So while we were playing with the building blocks that she had today, we also have some foam letters and numbers that my son had dumped on the floor, and I just thought this was another great opportunity for this activity to kind of naturally come about. So I asked her if she could find the number 1 for me, which she easily found, along with the number 2. And then I asked her if she could bring me 1 toy. And she did, and then I asked her if she could bring me 2 toys, and she just so happened to bring me 1 block that was the same color as the number that I had given her. Along with the number 2, she brought me 2 matching blocks that were the same color as the number 2 was as well. And I thought this was really interesting because I did not ask her to bring me color matching toys or toys that match. I simply asked her to bring me a toy, and this is what she did on her own. So I think this is another great activity that worked out way better than I thought it would. A little bit later in the day, we took our letter A and got the paints out again and started out with some finger painting, trying to color in the letter A. This quickly led to multiple finger painting, which led to hand painting. I mentioned in last week's video how she doesn't like to get too messy unless the mood strikes her, and it struck her today. She had paint almost up to her armpits, but she had a lot of fun. And this was another great activity, just reinforcing the letter A, because it gave us another opportunity to recap the words that we had discussed earlier in the day that started with the letter A. Wednesday. Today you're going to need some apples, a few different items that you can use as ramps, such as books, cardboard, old pieces of wood. We happen to have a slide on our main floor that came in very handy for this activity today. You're also going to need some toothpicks and a measuring tape of some sort. Today our program suggests that we read How Apples Grow, which we have read this book a few times, and Nola really had no interest in this morning. She really didn't want to read any of her apple books, so I didn't push the issue. In the morning, on the table, I had the toothpicks laid out along with the measuring tape and her letter A that we still hadn't cut out from the previous day's work. This caught our attention right away, as I hoped it would, and got us right into our activity. So our first activity is a math-based activity where we are to roll a couple of different apples down some ramps using the materials that we found around the house. We made sure the ramps were different lengths and heights and put at different angles so that the apples would roll differently off each one. While we were setting up and talking about what we were going to do today, we were talking about rolling the apples down the ramps onto the floor or onto the carpet, and I was asking her which one she think the apple would roll farther on, and she knew right away that the carpet was softer and fluffier, so it would slow the apple down a little bit more, and that the floor was harder and things would roll faster. And this, I imagine, just comes to her memory from pushing cars around on the floor. We also measured everything in sight, such as herself, her little brother, myself, the walls, the doors, the chairs, and the cat. I made sure to use 2 different sized apples for this activity so that we would get different results. The rolling was lots of fun. We did it off of a few different items. What we used most was a piece of cardboard and a lid of a big storage container and down our slide in the living room. She didn't really care too much for the measuring aspect of it. We did it a few times, but she was really just more interested in the rolling, and I was guessing at which one would go further. Our next activity was the apple poke. For this one, you can use toothpicks or golf tees. I chose toothpicks because that's what I had in my house, and I imagine the golf tees would be a little bit harder for her little hands to push into the apple just because it's thicker than a toothpick. So we started poking the apples, and right away she noticed that one of the apples had a bruise, and she poked that spot and told me that it was a lot easier to poke the toothpick into that spot. And then this activity seemed to be pretty easy for her. She was putting all of the toothpicks in, and then she was transferring the toothpicks from one apple to the other apple. So to make this a little bit harder, I just took a black magic marker and put some dots on one of the apple and to see if she could poke the toothpicks into the dots, and she got them bang on every time. This activity was a lot of fun, and we did it a few more times throughout the day. Once the apples had some toothpicks in them, she wanted to see if they would still roll down the ramps, so we went back to our ramps with our toothpicked apples, and she was disappointed to find out that they would only slide, but she still had quite a bit of fun trying to make them roll down the ramps with the toothpicks sticking out of them. And while we were doing these activities, she just happened to notice the letter A on my shirt and decided to start counting how many A's she could find on the shirt. And this relates back to some activities that we did earlier in the week and a little bit last week. So I thought that was really nice to see that that was popping up into her mind again, and she was taking notice of this particular letter that we had been talking so much about over the last week. Overall today, the activities took us about 45 minutes to complete in the morning, and then again she went back to them a few more times throughout the day, but she did this totally on her own and didn't need my supervision while practicing these activities again. Thursday. Today we're going to need some post-it notes and a marker to write on these post-it notes, and a whiteboard or a piece of paper to write the letter A. This morning we started off by actually baking some apple cinnamon oatmeal bake, which we didn't do because of this particular unit that we're in. It's something that we make around here on the regular and we hadn't had in a while, so I thought it was a great opportunity to use our apples that we've been talking so much about into some of our daily cooking routine. Today's math activity was taking 5 post-it notes and writing the numbers 1 through 5 on them and then sticking them to the apples. Throughout this activity, you are going to help your child line up the apples in numerical order, mix them up again and have them rearrange them. Just take different aspects on this activity. So what I did this morning was we stuck the numbers on the apples and then line them up 1 through 5. Then I would mix them up and she would rearrange them in the proper order again. And then I took the post-it notes off of the apples and had her stick them on the apples back in numerical order. And we ran through these games a few times until she tired of it. The other activity that we were to do today was to play apple hide and seek. So this is pretty straightforward. You take your 5 apples that you were playing with earlier, or however many apples you want really, hide them around the house, give your child a basket or bowl or bag or something to collect them in, and then have them hunt around the house to find them. So for this activity, I kept the post-it notes on the particular apples, so if she was missing one, she could tell me what number she was missing throughout the 5 apples. This was a really great game. We took turns hiding them, we took turns finding them, and this again was another one that we played a few times throughout the day. We were also supposed to work a little bit more on the letter A today and write it down and recall some of the words that start with the letter A and talk about the sound of the letter A. She didn't take much interest into writing the letter A down, but I really wasn't too concerned. This was an activity that we had done in last week's unit as well that wasn't included with the instructions for the day, but we had done it anyways. But we did take the opportunity while we were cutting out our letter A for our alphabet book to talk about the letter A. That's when I brought this up again. We were recalling words that started with the letter A, talking about the sound of the letter A, and a little bit later on in the day, she had received a gift of a sticker book, and so when we were pulling off some stickers, we found some new words that we hadn't talked about before that also started with the letter A. So it was a great way to tie it in to our activities that we were doing, even though it wasn't part of this program. Friday. Today we have another great day of very simple activities. We're going to start out with our poem and our song, and today we're supposed to read How Apples Grow again. Nola really had no interest in this morning, so I didn't push the issue, and I let her choose which one of our apple books that she wanted to read. And today she chose to read Apple Picking, or Caillou Goes Apple Picking. Not a very informative book, but age appropriate, and she really likes it. Things that you want to talk about today with your child are really just a recall and a recap of all the things that we've learned about apples. How they grow, where they come from, to make sure that they're retaining the information that we've been pumping into them the last 2 weeks about apples. Our learning activity is a very simple one today. You're simply going to write your kid's name in black magic marker, or any kind of marker, pen that you have for that matter, on a piece of paper. The larger the better, as depending on your kid's age. And then they're going to take some sticker dots and go over the lines with the sticker dots to effectively write their names in stickers. So I started out the morning having the name card and the stickers out on the table, hoping to catch Nola's attention, which worked out great. The one thing I wish I did different about this name card was I wish that I wrote her name in small letters instead of capital letters. I'm not sure. I think I did the capital letters just because that was the example that was given. Typically we work with small letters rather than capitals. And I wish that I had spaced the letters out a little bit more, just so it was a little bit easier for her to get the stickers on and recognize her name when the stickers were done. So we started the name sticker, and she really just did one letter and then kind of lost interest in it. I was helping her a lot with that first letter. We read our Caillou book after that on the computer. And after we read the book, she continued with the name sticker dot unassisted on her own and did fantastic with it. Her aim was really, really good with lining these stickers up. She did a really good job on this, totally on her own. As we were eating our morning apple after we did the name stickers, we just took that opportunity to recap and recall all the things that we had learned about apples over the last 2 weeks, from colors and flavors and what we liked best, to how they grow and where they grow and when you pick them, the books that we really enjoyed doing. We were looking at the activities that we had done, especially the ones on paper that I had taped up over her little table in the dining room. It was really nice just to have those in sight, to see them. Later on in the day, we baked some mini apple pies using some little crescent rolls. It's a really easy recipe. We've done it a couple of times, but I just thought it was a really good one that didn't take a lot of prep, didn't take a lot of time, and they're really, really tasty. So this week was another great week with our playing preschool at home. It's unbelievably easy to complete these activities. They don't take a lot of time and effort. I always read through.
Can I?
Want to sit with me?
Yeah.
Sure. I always read through the next day's activities the night before in case there's anything that I need to prep, and it's very minimal prep. It doesn't take a lot of time. It's more so just getting the Post-its out or getting the toothpicks out and stuff like that. It just gives me that little bit of extra time in the morning where I'm not sort of scrambling to get things ready if she wakes up early. I also read through the day's work first thing in the morning when I wake up, and this way it just keeps it fresh in my mind, so that when I see an opportunity for this activity to be brought up just more organically rather than sit down and let's do this sort of format. I don't find that format works too well, so I really, really like it when we can just naturally work these activities into our daily routine. And having the table set up in the morning has really, really helped. It gets us right into the activity, and it helps Nola want to learn and explore and play with what she sees on the table. I also noticed this week there have been a lot of moments so far in this program where I thought these activities are going to be a little too easy for her. And it's not always about the challenge. Just presenting an activity in a different way than what you would normally do, such as recognizing the letter A. She fully knows what the letter A looks like, although through these activities we have discovered a different type of A that I've never shown her before, which is the typed A with the little hook on top. And throughout the week she has noticed the letter A many, many times in different places, and is pointing it out to me, which is something that she has never done before until I how we did this program, and I was giving her the task of finding the letter A, and we did the letter A hunt with the flashlights, which was a lot of fun, super easy, and this is proving that these activities are sticking with her and she's actually getting a lot of information out of this. That's it for this week. Like I said, it was another great, easy week of playing preschool at home with our 3-year-olds here, and you know, even my...
This matches with this.
It is about the same size, isn't it? Even our just about 1-year-old son participates in the activities a lot of the times. We've had a lot of fun playing with apples this week. Yeah, we had a lot of fun playing with apples this week, and we can't wait to get into colors next week. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're thinking about following along with our preschool program, then consider subscribing. Thanks.